They say airports are the ultimate leveler. Everyone's a little tired, a little anxious. Nobody really feels in control. But sometimes you find out that the boarding pass in your hand doesn't guarantee your seat in the world, no matter what you've achieved. That was the day my family learned exactly where the lines were drawn and what could happen when someone decided to erase them. You're kidding me, right? That's what the woman behind the gate said to my kids, my two teenagers, Zora and Jaden, when they handed her our premium boarding passes. Not a please, not a hello, just that flat suspicion, the kind that's been trained in over years, you know what I mean? The next words out of her mouth, "These can't be your passes," cut through the hum of O'Hare's Terminal C like an announcement nobody wanted to hear. But let me back up a sec. I'm Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Horizon Technologies, though you wouldn't know it to look at me running through a terminal in a suit, phone glued to my ear, trying to get to my kids before the situation at Gate C-17 spiraled further out of control. That day started like 100 other business trips. Zora, 16, and Jaden, 15, had flown with me before, but this was the first time I sent them ahead with their own premium tickets, promising I'd catch up after my board meeting wrapped. What did go wrong? Turns out quite a bit. Because from the moment my kids lined up, the air felt thick not just with jet fuel, but with those glances, that tension, the kind you get used to but never really stop noticing. My daughter caught it first. The way the man in front tucked his bag closer, the side eye from a gate agent named Sandra, who by her badge and her bun had worked there long enough to know all the protocols, including the unwritten ones. "Where's your father?" she asked, voice sharp enough to draw stares. Zora tried to explain, but Sandra didn't want to hear it. She just waved them aside, told them the seats weren't theirs, and gestured for security, all while ignoring the actual boarding passes in their hands. Maybe you've never seen a crowd turn cold so fast, but my kids have. Jane tried to push back, voice shaking, "Just scan them, please." But logic doesn't work when someone's already made up their mind about who belongs and who doesn't. That's when the crowd started to grow, people rubbernecking, a few looking away, but one man, Thomas Whitfield, I'd later learn actually stepped forward. "Why not just check the passes?" he suggested, gently, the way only a man with nothing to prove can. But Sandra stood her ground. That's when security showed up, radios and authority, circling my kids like they'd already been found guilty. Zora called me, voice tight. "Dad, they won't let us board. They say we stole the passes." I was out of my meeting before my investors finished their coffee, crossing the airport at a speed I haven't hit since college. There's a special kind of fear that comes with being a black parent, knowing your children are alone in a space that doesn't see them as kids, but as a problem to be solved. "Put me on speaker," I told her, trying to keep my voice level as I walked. I introduced myself, spelled out my executive platinum status, recited my children's names and birth dates, all the facts that should have ended the conversation. But Sandra was unmoved, her tone only softening when I threatened to escalate things to her supervisors. Even then, she hedged, scanning the passes with visible reluctance, the machine finally beeping acceptance like it was some kind of surprise. And you know what? My kids could have boarded. The drama could have ended right there. But they waited for me, even as the crowd's muttering picked up, phrases like special treatment and playing the race card floating just loud enough to sting. It was Thomas, again, who insisted they had the right to wait for me. That's when Captain Richard Lawson, the pilot, in full uniform, stepped out from the jetway. "I'm the captain of this flight. What's going on here?" He listened to both sides, then quietly told the passengers there'd be a brief delay. When I finally arrived, out of breath and angry, he greeted me, shook my hand, apologized for the situation. He didn't minimize or deflect. Instead, he used his authority to insist we sit down together before boarding, a small act, but one that reset the tone. Sandra, for her part, finally seemed to realize who I was, or maybe what this moment might cost her. After we boarded, I tried to reassure my kids. "You handled yourselves well." But Zora just shrugged. "We're used to it, Dad." That's what broke me, the idea that they expected to be doubted, no matter how hard I'd worked or what doors I'd managed to open. Even in first class, people stared, some with curiosity, others with something colder. A woman across the aisle leaned over, voice low. "Not everyone thinks that way, you know." I nodded politely, but the pain was still there. Soon after, Captain Lawson came to our row, kneeling beside us like an old friend. "What happened at the gate shouldn't have happened," he said. "I've already reported it to the airline. When we land, the CEO wants to meet with you." That surprised me. Pilots don't usually stick their necks out, but this man seemed determined not to let slide. Later, as the plane soared over the Midwest, I found myself replaying everything. The boarding passes, the stares, the casual way my kids were denied their place. I thought about the countless times I'd been mistaken for support staff at conferences, asked for ID when my colleagues weren't, forced to prove I belonged. But this time, it had happened to my kids. That changes everything. When we landed, we were asked to stay seated as other passengers disembarked, the CEO, William Hargrove, waiting at the gate with his chief of customer experience. We moved to a conference room, the conversation direct. Hargrove apologized, but I didn't let him off easy. "How many times has this happened before?" I asked. "What's going to change?" To his credit, he didn't dodge. He promised a full review, admitted the system was broken. Even Zora spoke up, asking if they'd review all gate agents, not just Sandra. The CEO agreed, promising real action. I declined the offer of free tickets. "Make a donation to the Equal Justice Initiative instead," I said. "And let me speak publicly about this." We shook on it. As we left, Captain Lawson pulled me aside. "Pilots are talking about refusing to fly unless something changes." By the time we got to the hotel, social media had blown up. Pilots, passengers, even the press were talking about it. That evening, Sandra called. She apologized, honestly, for the first time. She said she'd watched the security video and didn't like the person she saw. "I want to help fix this," she offered. My kids were skeptical, but I told them sometimes the people who've made mistakes have the best insights on how to fix them if they're willing to own up. The next morning, Hargrove called again. The pilots' protest had spread, flights were grounded, and the board was panicking. He asked me to join a task force to oversee new protocols and serve as an advisor. My kids were the ones who convinced me. "When you have a chance to make a difference, you take it," Zora said. We met with Congressman Davis, who'd been tracking discrimination in the industry for years. He asked us to testify before Congress, not just about what happened, but about what real change looks like. My kids agreed. "If it helps someone else, it's worth it," they said. The CEO rolled out new training, external audits, and Sandra became part of the solution, helping design the protocol she'd once ignored. 6 months later, Captain Lawson flew Flight 2187 back into O'Hare, landing at what the staff now called Reynolds Gate. Complaints about discrimination had dropped across the company, and new regulations were rolling out industry-wide. The ripple effect was real, not just a headline, but measurable change. So here's what I want to ask you. What would you do if you saw someone being pushed aside? Not because they did anything wrong, but because someone decided they didn't belong? Would you step up or look away? The lines are still there, but maybe, just maybe, we can redraw them together. Let's talk about it. What do you think real change comes from: policy, protest, or ordinary people refusing to let things go? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever seen or experienced something like this, share your story. Because the only way we move forward is together.